Welcome back to another edition of the Buy Low Fantasy Sports Show with Mitch and Bam on 1490 Newstalk 1077. I'm Mitch. He's Bam. Bam, say hello.
Hey.
I want to thank you for tuning in. Thank 1490 for having us on today. Now let's get into week 15 of the NFL season. Now, this time of year, it's important for fantasy football managers, for owners, to understand the different playoff implications as we walk through each of these games to make sure you're making the best plays available for your fantasy teams.
Oh, yeah.
So, Bam, with all that being said, you ready to kick off this Week 15 slate walk?
Let's get to walking.
Nice. First game we have on the slate is the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. This game has a 40.5 point total. Packers are favored by 4.5. Now, this is a must-win game for the Chicago Bears to keep their playoff hopes alive, and the Packers need to win to just kind of stay ahead of the Vikings in their division. Bam, you want to kick us off? Tell us what you got on this game.
Oh, yeah. So starting off on the Bears side, running back David Montgomery. He's a guy getting solid volume. He's got 17 touches in his last 3 games on average.
Nice.
But he doesn't get much passing game work, unfortunately, because that goes to Tariq Cohen, who is the opposite. He gets the passing game work, but no carry.
Nice.
So they need a multi-touchdown game to pay off for you, and I think the Packers' run defense is suspect enough. I kind of like David Montgomery here.
Yeah, for sure. So jumping over to the passing game, quarterback Mitch Trubisky, my namesake, he's actually played great as of late. He's earned the name Trubisky back. He was Bortles for a few weeks ago.
Wow. He got a promotion.
That's right. So he's averaging 26 fantasy points per game over his last 3. His wide receivers, Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller, they continue to see insane usage. The two of them have combined for 56 targets over the last 3 games, and the Packers have been middle of the pack versus wide receivers over that same time frame. I'm firing all 3 of those guys up in every format.
Nice.
It's also worth pointing out the Packers have been getting booty blasted by tight ends as of late. Luckily for them, the Bears have a few scrubs, and that's about it. The scrubs' names are J.P. Holtz. He has no relation to Lou whatsoever. And Jesper Horsted, just in case you're desperate for a streamer this week.
Yeah, we actually looked up to see if J.P. Holtz was related to Lou, and he wasn't.
He is not. Sorry to disappoint you guys. What you got on the Green Bay side?
Running back Aaron Jones blew up last week, so you can safely fade him here because he's a blow up or doesn't do anything type guy.
Nice.
Either blows up or doesn't show up. That's his thing.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that the Bears get Akeem Hicks, their big run-stuffing defensive tackle, back this week. And their rushing game defensive splits have been insane with or without him in the lineup. So, in other words, he shuts down the run.
Nice.
Then you got quarterback Aaron Rodgers. He's the most matchup-dependent quarterback in fantasy football this year.
Yeah.
How the mighty have fallen.
Yep, for sure.
He averages 29 points per game against teams that rank bottom 10 in fantasy points per game allowed. And in all of the games, he averages just 13 fantasy points a game. And the Bears' defense is 5th best in fantasy points per game allowed to QBs. So I'm fading Aaron Rodgers. He just isn't the same this year.
Wow. Way to take a stand, Bam. I
Yeah,
like it.
fade. And then wide receiver Devontae Adams is always in play. Past that, it's just a jumble of scrubs. So fading the Packers this week. I like the Bears.
I think you can play Devontae Adams just based on his volume. You have to play him in season long, and I think you can play him in DFS just based on the volume.
Yeah.
But don't expect a ceiling game here.
No.
Either defense?
Nope. 9. No. Negative. There's only so many ways to say no.
I gotcha. All right, up next, we have the Patriots at the Cincinnati Bengals.
Gross.
Game has a 41.5 point total. Patriots are favored by 10. So this looks like a picture-perfect matchup for the Patriots offense to me. They're trying to scrape the film off of their recent offensive performances. Get it? They got caught filming again.
Yeah, they love filming.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Belichick can be a director when he retires from football.
Yeah.
All that camera skills,
That's right. So what you got on this one?
So over the last few weeks, the Bungles have quietly improved versus the run, but they still give it up to running backs in the passing game. So we talked about this. Like, you want to use a 3-week sample when you're looking at these stats, not year long. Otherwise, it's deceptive.
Yeah.
So having said all that, I'm going to fade Sony Michel and I'm going to play James White because I like the matchup for James White better, and he's getting more run of late. He's always been big in December.
Yeah.
And then quarterback Tom Brady in this passing game has been straight up booty of late. Just garbage. So wide receiver Julian Edelman is the only playable piece of this passing game besides, obviously, James White.
Yeah.
So what do you think about fire them both up. So what do you think about the Bungles?
Yeah, so the Patriots defense is not as good as it was earlier in the year, but I think it's definitely good enough to stymie the Bungles passing game. So no thank you. Even though the Red Rockets back, they've got all their pieces back. No thanks. No, not here.
Exactly.
But running back Joe Mixon, he's an interesting piece to me because he went absolutely ham last week. He went beast mode on them versus the Browns. He got 26 touches, 186 yards, and a touchdown. If he can get that same volume going here, I think he's got a very nice floor.
Nice.
Wrapping this whole game up, what do you think about either defense in this spot?
Patriots have fallen off of late, but any defense is playable against the Bungles. So maybe they get back to scoring running back one numbers again this week. They have had a brutal schedule of late. So.
Yeah, I like it. All right, up next we have the Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans. This game has the highest point total on the slate at 51.5, and the Titans are favored by 3. Now, there's some major playoff implications for this game. Whoever wins has a 1-game lead in the AFC South and controls their own playoff destiny.
Nice.
What you got on this one, Bam?
So starting off on the Texans side, quarterback Deshaun Watson. He's been on fire the last 2 weeks, putting up 60 fantasy points in his last 2 outings. You got wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins is always in play. Past him, Will Fuller got in limited practice all week. He's trending towards playing. With the Titans missing 2 cornerbacks here, the upside is rather obvious, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And tight end Darren Fells has been a favorite red zone target of Dijon all year. So I'd like him to get at least 1, maybe even 2 touchdowns in this spot against the Titans who've given up to the tight end on the regular this year.
Yeah. The Texans running backs, what do you think about either one of them?
Whatever their names are. They aren't worth knowing, I guess. They don't do anything.
Yeah. So jumping over the Titans side, running back Derrick Henry, he continues to go bonkers. He's had over 600 yards and 7 touchdowns in his last 4 games. However, he's been nursing this hamstring injury for the last few weeks. You got to start him in season long, I think. But this might be finally the spot to fade him in DFS.
Woo.
Famous last words, though, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this would be another 40 burger for him.
Yeah. So what do you think about quarterback Ryan Tannehill, this passing game? What are you doing with it?
Ooh, the resurgent Ryan Tannehill. He's actually playing at an MVP level.
Ooh.
I think. He's playing lights out.
Yeah.
And the only real concern with him is volume because the Titans are happy to run the ball 30 times with Derrick Henry. But I expect the Texans to focus on Derrick Henry a bit. And with that hamstring injury, I think Tannehill is the must-play for me.
Yeah.
And then you got tight end Jonnu Smith. He's in a great spot versus the Texans defense, allowing a 72% success rate and 13.5 yards per attempt to tight ends the last few weeks.
So
that's bad.
Is that a good thing for Jonnu?
It's good for Jonnu.
Nice.
It's good for him. And additionally, the Texans have allowed the second most yards after the catch, and 60% of Jonnu's receiving yards have come via yards after the catch. That's good.
Nice.
So all that to say, he's a great play, but I'm just be wary of the Anthony Ferkser, vulture touchdown. Yeah. Watch him get the 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Wide receiver A.J. Brown, what do you got on him?
Yeah, he went ham last week. Yeah. He gets as much yak as Jonnu Smith. However, the Texans, if you look at that 3-week rolling sample we were talking about, they've really clamped down versus outside wide receivers of late, allowing a mere 43 success. So I'm still playing A.J. Brown in season long, but I'll probably be fading in DFS. You don't want to go back to the well on a guy that just went nuts.
Yeah. So no other piece of this passing game is really worth talking about to me. What do you think?
No, probably get some production here or there, but
yeah, especially with Adam Humphries being out, that's a big blow, I think, to the middle of there. So I think it just concentrates the offense more.
Yeah.
Either defense here?
No.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
No, nothing.
Sweet. Up next, we have the Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. This game has a 45-point total, and the Chiefs are favored by 10.
Wow. That's bad.
So, playoff implications-wise, the Chiefs have already locked up their playoff appearance. They won their division, but the Broncos need a lot to go their way over these next couple weeks in order to get in as a wild card. Starting with, they need a win today against the Kansas City Chiefs. There are some weather concerns with this game. The forecast calls for thunderstorms starting about an hour before kickoff and then really ramping up around 2 Eastern. So about midway through the second quarter. So watch that as you're setting your lineups today, and you have a lot of Kansas City Chiefs, Denver Broncos. Just kind of watch that weather.
Right. And that's the weather report from Buy Low Fantasy Sports. Back to you.
Nice. You want to kick us off with the Broncos?
Yes. Quarterback Drew Lock straight up disrespected the Texans last week, who were coming off a big upset of the Patriots.
Nice.
Now he gets to play the Chiefs, also coming off an upset victory over the Patriots. So you know what to do. His pass catchers, wide receiver Cortland Sutton, has a quote-unquote bad matchup, but he's an elite talent getting elite volume, so play him. Same with Noah Fant. I think the Broncos can cover the spread here. I believe that, especially if running back Phillip Lindsay can pull his head out and get it going versus the Chiefs defense that loves to give up production to running backs.
Nice.
So what do you think about the Chiefs?
So I know the conventional wisdom here is that this is quote-unquote a bad matchup for the Chiefs. Denver Broncos, they've been playing lights out on defense, but they're the Chiefs, man. just play them all.
For frick's sake.
Yeah. Side note here, you've talked about in the past wish casting. So avoid wish casting here. Play your studs, set the scrubs. Don't try to get those cute with McCole Hardman, DeMarcus Robinson. Don't try to get cute. Play your Tyreek Hills, play your Travis Kelce's, play your Patrick Mahomes. And do not, I repeat, do not play any of the Chiefs' 87 running backs. With all that being said, let's put a nice little bow on this game. And do you want either defense here?
The Chiefs are interesting because they play better at home, but I think the Broncos can put some points on the board. So no, thank you.
No, thank you.
Nope.
All right. Up next, we have the Dolphins at the Giants. This game has a 46.5-point total. The Giants are favored by 3.5. And just FYI, there are no playoff implications here.
Nope.
Yeah, neither one of these teams are making the playoffs. You want to start us off with the Dolphins side?
Yeah, so this Dolphins passing game's in a good spot versus that steaming pile of dog poop Giants pass defense. And they just cut their best cornerback, Janoris Jenkins, after he had a little Twitter rant earlier in the week.
Yeah.
So I guess they were mad about that. I mean, it's not like he said Epstein didn't kill himself or something offensive like that, you know?
Hey, you better watch out, Bam. Oh. Hillary's going to send Bill out to the she shed to fire up the suicide man. He's going to be coming after you.
I better not take a bath.
That's right. Don't be walking up any stairs anytime soon.
No. Uh-oh. Delete this recording.
Right.
Yeah, so back to football. Right. The usual suspects are in play. Devontae Parker, he's going to play. Got a nice, fresh new contract. Mike Gesicki. If you look at the stats, you'll see that the Giants are quote-unquote good against the tight end, but that was when Jabril Peppers was playing. Now he's on injured reserve, so play Gesicki. Ask Ertz how that matchup works out.
Yeah.
And Ryan Fitzpatrick's obviously in play if you like those two, so play those guys.
Right.
And then Patrick Laird is a running back for the Dolphins. He's a decent streamer. If you're desperate, I wouldn't expect much out of him. So
Yeah,
What you got on the Giants?
I like Patrick Laird, especially in PPR. Not so much in standard scoring, but in PPR, I like
Yeah,
him.
I'll get some catches for you.
Yeah, he gets 9 targets last week. So, yeah. On the Giants side, so tight end Evan Ingram and quarterback Danny Dimes, who we've lovingly monikered Danny Pennies, they're both out. So we get another week of Eli Manning's retirement tour.
Nice.
Among his
it's like Kiss's retirement tour. They just don't stop,
Right.
Every 5 years there's a retirement tour.
Yes, been going for 40 years now. What could go wrong? All right, so among his pass catchers, wide receiver Darius Slayton, he went nuts against the Eagles last week. Really, all of his production came on 2 long bombs, so I'm not counting on that moving forward. I think he'll drop a dud here. Wide receiver Golden Tate, he's been banged up. So I like wide receiver Sterling Shepard to have a great game here. He's averaging 7 targets over the last 3, and the Dolphins' passing defense is just hot garbage.
Yeah.
What do you think about Saquon Barkley, the running back here?
Oh, boy. Man, he just hasn't looked right all year. And the Dolphins, while they're a putrid defense in all phases, they're more attackable through the air than on the ground because they like to blitz a lot. So it pains me to say I'm fading Barkley this week.
Yeah. And either defense?
No.
All right, moving on. Philadelphia Eagles at the Washington Redskins. This game has a 38.5 point total. Surprisingly, not the lowest score on the slate. And the Eagles are favored by 4.5. Now, the Eagles need a playoff win here to keep pace with the Cowboys to win the NFC East. And the Redskins are, they're in the blow for Burrow sweepstakes. So, what you got on the Eagles side?
Well, the Eagles wide receivers are deceased, with Alshon Jeffrey joining Deshaun Jackson and several others on the injured reserve list. And then you got Nelson Aguilar as a game time decision. And behind him, there's a bunch of rookies and scrubs. So I'm just going to play Zach Ertz, and that's about it.
Yeah, don't blame me there.
And then running back Miles Sanders is in a good spot against an up and down Deadskins run defense. I like the mismatch between the Eagles O-line and the Skins defensive line, missing their best player, Ryan Kerrigan.
Yeah.
So what do you like on the Deadskins, if there's anything?
Yeah. So quarterback Dwayne Trashcans, he continues to play like his namesake, which is unfortunate because this could be a nut spot for wide receiver Scary Terry McLaurin. I think I'm still taking a stab on him in DFS though. But probably not playing him if I'm in, my fantasy playoffs. So I'm not playing. I'm trying to win.
Nice.
So, what about either defense here?
The Eagles make some sense here, but I just don't trust that pass defense. They worry me. They're a poorly coached unit. They do cover 0 all the time. So no, thank you.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, up next we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Detroit Lions. This game has a 45.5 point total. The Bucs are favored by 3.5. You want to kick us off with the Bucs side?
Oh, boy. Tons of injuries here. Yeah. So quarterback Jabu Winston has a broken thumb, but he's going to play. So one has to wonder if he'll commit even more turnovers now. But luckily for him, the Lions defense has the fewest interceptions in the league. So weakness versus weakness.
Right.
And then wide receiver Mike Evans is out with a hamstring injury. He's probably done for the year. So I think this is an obvious volume bump for Chris Godwin, who's going to be shadowed by cornerback Darius Slayton. Yes, he shadows to the slot as well. And for what we saw in usage, I think Rashad Perriman, who's getting the deep A-dot role that Evans had, I think he's Evans' direct replacement, with some guy named Justin Watson's and Scotty Miller being the number 3 wide receivers mixing in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And interestingly, when Evans went out, tight ends O.J. Howard and Make Cameron Braid again got more snaps and targets as the Bucs ran more 2 tight end sets. If you're confused, so am I. So if you expect this trend to continue, both are streamable this week, but I'm not going to go. So to sum up my thoughts on the Bucs passing game, pick up Rashad Perriman if you had Evans. The tight ends are streamable, but don't expect the same level of production from an offense missing one of its best players. And lastly, Please hear me out. The Lions' defense is decimated by injuries, yes. And you might be tempted to play a Buccaneers running back, but don't do it. Don't do it.
What?
Don't do it.
What?
Don't do it.
You could say that again.
Yeah, don't do it.
All right. On the Lions side, quarterback David he came back to earth last week. He had a nice Thanksgiving game, went on the road to play the Vikes last week, and predictably flopped.
Yeah.
Now, remember, this is a third-string UDFAR, undrafted free agent rookie, making his third NFL start. So don't expect him to set the world on fire, right?
No.
Did that even need to be said?
Apparently it does.
Of his pass catchers, wide receiver Kenny Golladay, he still gets those down the field looks. So go ahead and fire him up. Because the Lions have lost two other key pieces over the last 2 weeks as part of this passing game. Tight end TJ Hawkinson and wide receiver Marvin Jones, they've both been placed on injured reserve. Maybe this leads to extra looks for wide receiver Danny Amendola, but you're wish casting it. You really don't have nothing to hang your hat on there.
No, your hat will just fall to the ground as you try to hang it on something.
Right. And running back Bo Scarborough, he has gotten some nice usage over the last 3 weeks. He's carried the ball more than 20 times in each of those games. However, he gets a matchup against the Bucs, who have been great against the run. Go ahead and fade him here.
Yeah.
So all in all, don't play any of the Detroit Lions.
No, except for Golladay. Yeah.
Golladay, yeah. You want either defense here?
I think both are in play here, as we talked about in this long rant about all these injuries. Jabu has a broken thumb on his throwing hand. Yes, the Lions will get a lot of interceptions, but that usually leads to some weirdness, fumbles, botched snaps, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, Jabu has the most interceptions in the league, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
And then on the Bucs side, they are playing the aforementioned UDFAR, David Blech, in his third career game, so I'd take a stab at either. That's about it.
Yeah. All right, that's gonna wrap us up for segment 1 of the Buy Low Fantasy Sports Show on 1490 News Talk. Let's take a quick break. Hear the messages from 1490. When we come back, we'll continue our Week 15 slate.
Nice.
Take a roll. Welcome back to the Buy Low Fantasy Sports Show with Mitch and Bam on 1490 News Talk 1077. Let's continue our Week 15 slate walk. Kicking it off here with the Seattle Seahawks at the Carolina Panthers. This game has a 48.5 point total. The Sea Chickens are favored by 6.5. Now, the playoff implications for this game, the Seahawks need to win to keep pace in the wild card race. And the Carolina Panthers are toast. They're done. What you got on the Sea Chicken side, Bam?
Yeah. So starting off with running back Chris Carson. I think he's in a TGBT spot, too good to be true.
Yes.
So it's important to note that while the matchup is pristine and Rashad Penny is out, Carson's only scored more than 20 fantasy points twice this year. So, and you tack onto that, the coaching staff mentioned CJ Procise getting Rashad Penny's carries. Combine that with Carson's known fumbling issues, and you got yourself a recipe for fantasy disaster. So I'm fading Carson in DFS this week, but I might take a stab on CJ Procise. What do you think?
Oh, yeah? That's Very interesting. Definitely contrarian. I like it.
And then you got quarterback Russell Wilson. He's been ice cold of late, averaging
Ice.
ice baby. He's averaging a meager 14 fantasy points per game in his last 4 outings. However, the wheels have completely come off this Panthers defense. They've allowed a 300-yard passer 3 of the last 4 games, trash cans being the exception. And so since I expect Carson to fail in this spot, I think the Hawks passing game must get it going here if they're going to win.
Yep.
So I like Wilson to get it going with a finally healthy wide receiver Tyler Lockett. He was battling that shin injury. And I like tight end Jacob Hollister to get some run as well. But don't be surprised if their 4-man committee at wide receiver behind those guys gets touchdowns as well.
Yeah, right.
So what do you think about the Panthers?
You got a quarterback, Kyle Allen. He has straight up filled his drawers with poopy the last few weeks.
Oh.
He's been producing some decent fantasy scores during that time, but he's been a turnover machine. We should call him the White Jabu. Now, among his pass catchers, wide receiver DJ Moore has 27 targets the last 3 weeks.
Nice.
And Curtis Samuel, he's one of those buy low, popping on a lot of those buy low air yard models that you can find on the intrawebs. He's been getting a lot of high ADOT, average depth of target. And so with him getting all of those high ADOT targets, I think he's a great DFS tournament play.
Nice.
And you have tight end Ian Thomas. He's streamable again because Greg Olsen is out, still nursing that nasty concussion from a couple weeks back.
Oh, yeah.
And Christian McCaffrey, he's only scored 2 touchdowns in his last 4 games. Now, my spidey senses are telling me that he's due for a fantasy 40-burger here.
Nice.
Go ahead and write that down. Take it to the bank.
Writing it down. 40-burger.
Yeah.
And he blew up against the Seahawks team last year around this time. So got some history.
And additionally, it's worth pointing out the Seahawks defensive end, Javette, I can never say his name, Clowney, he's out. How do you say his first name?
Jadeveon.
Yeah, there you go. I think it gives a nice bump to the whole Panthers offense. He's been a big disruptor all year. So all those guys are definitely in play. What do you think about either defense here?
The Seahawks make sense with White Jabu turning over nonstop. But I think CMC gets it going here and ruins the Hawks' defensive fantasy score. So neither defense for me, please.
Yeah, I get it. All right. Up next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Oakland Raiders. This game has a 45.5 point total. The Raiders are favored by 6.5. So we have 2 teams here, both coming off of 3 straight blowout losses. And this is the last ever home game for Oakland Raiders since they moved to their Viva Las Vegas next year.
Nice.
So, go ahead and kick us off for the Jaguars here.
So we've talked about White Jabu, so let's bounce over to Fat CMC, Leonard Fournette. Yeah. So he's seen his volume drop in recent weeks with the Jags getting blown out. He's gotten some passing game work, but that's not been enough, unfortunately. So I think he's going to need a 2-touchdown game to pay off for you here. And since he only has 3 all year, well, good luck.
Yeah, right. What about his passing game?
Yeah, with the Jags passing game, wide receiver DJ Chark, Baby Chark, is out, which will mean more targets for D.D. Westbrook and Chris Conley, which is good, right? But the matchup is nice for both, yes. But they both underperformed all year, even when getting good volume and in good matchups. I think the Jags have checked out. I think they're done. They're just waiting for the season to be over. They've lost 5 straight. So I'm skeptical of this entire offense. I'm fading completely the Jaguars offense.
Nice.
What do you think about the Raiders?
So Derek Carr, he had a decent game last week after pooping his pants in the previous 2. His last game in Oakland. I expect him to hit tight end Darren Waller and wide receiver Tyrell Williams regularly and have a good to great game here.
Nice.
Now, here's where things get kind of tricky. Okay, so Josh Jacobs, he was out last week. He's been battling this shoulder injury all year long. If he's out again this week, running back DeAndre Washington, he got 20 touches last week. He figures he'll probably get somewhere close to the same in a great matchup against the Jaguars' run defense that is just plain right, downright god awful.
Yeah.
So if he's in, Josh Jacobs, if he's in, I don't want any running back here because we can't trust any of them to get a full workload. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a too good to be true spot for the reasons you stated. The matchup's pristine, but with Joe Jack being hurt, you don't know if he plays, you don't know how much he's going to play, and yeah, I agree with you here.
Yeah, and the reports have been confusing all week because they say he's going to play, then he's not going to play. He looks great. The results of an MRI, but then Friday, they were talking about, well, he had problems putting on a sweater. It hurt too much for him to put on a sweater. The guy can't put a sweatshirt on, and you expect him to go out and play football?
Yeah, how are you going to play football with no feet?
Yeah, right. So, yeah, it's just an interesting conundrum. Watch the injuries leading up to kickoff and see if he's out. If he's out, go ahead and fire up DeAndre Washington. Either defense here?
The Raiders a bit seem interesting with Chark out and the Jags just mailing it in. They're streamable, but just don't expect a big score because they're all so bad. So.
Yeah, you're just hoping for a non-zero score.
Exactly.
All right, up next we have the Cleveland Browns at the Arizona Cardinals. This game has a 49-point total. The Browns are favored by 3. Now, the Browns must win to keep their playoff hopes alive. So going back to earlier this offseason, we told you to fade this team from the get-go. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to pat ourselves on the back here.
Yeah.
They've underperformed all year. They were the toast to the fantasy world, and we were like, nope. No,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So go ahead and kick us off with the Browns.
Yeah, so the Browns passing game, you got tight end David Njoku. He's fresh off injury reserve, and last week he got 38% of the snaps, 13% of the targets, and he gets the nut matchup versus the Arizona Crapnels' horrid defense. I think he's worth a dice roll if he can get more run here. Hopefully he gets more snaps and targets in this spot.
Yeah.
And then you got quarterback Faker Fairfield and Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. They're all banged up with various injuries, both to their bodies and their gigantic egos. Both are bruised. And this is a nut matchup for the passing game as a whole, not just the tight end. The Cardinals have allowed the most touchdown passes in the league, even more than the Dolphins, believe it or not.
Wow.
But outside of Njoku, I don't have much interest. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, all those guys hurt. Yeah, it's just tough to play in there.
Yeah.
What do you think about the running back situation?
I think both running backs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, are playable in this spot, especially since he's quietly closed that snap and touch count a bit the last 3 weeks. But Chubb's still in the lead. So I'm just going to play both.
Nice. I like it. All right, jumping over to the card side. Running back Kenyon Drake, he has been getting 65% of the snaps and a steady 15 touches per game. He gets a potential smash spot. Look, we just saw Joe Mixon go absolutely nuts against the Cleveland Browns. He had a career day against them, and Kenyon Drake gets that, nice matchup coming right afterwards. However, running back David Johnson, he's complained about his role all week or earlier in the week. And so do we have a squeaky wheel narrative here on our hands? I want to play Drake. I want to play somebody against this Browns defense, but I just worry that the snap counts, those carries, I worry they get kind of even back out here, and which just doesn't lead to good fantasy production for anybody.
Nope.
From the passing game, quarterback Kyler Murray, he's a streamable option here. Cleveland's defense doesn't scare me. And wide receiver Christian Kirk, he gets all the down the field targets. So he's the only pass catcher I want from this offense. Look, wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald, he has 7 targets as well last week, but he's old. He can't remember to take his Metamucil before every game. They won't allow him to bring his walker out on the field. So, I mean, he can't get it going. He's just too old.
He's old and busted.
Yeah, old and busted. He's not the new hotness. Christian Kirk is the new hotness.
Yes.
So, go ahead and fire up Kyler Murray. Go ahead and fire up Christian Kirk. That's about all I want from this offense.
Yeah.
What about either defense here?
So the Cardinals have allowed a top defensive score 2 straight weeks. However, the Rams and the Steelers defenses, who got those nice fantasy scores, are pretty good.
Yeah.
And the Browns are above average at best. They're missing their 2 best pass rushers, with Myles Garrett beating people with helmets and the other guy being out.
Yeah.
So having said all that, I'd play the Browns in season long, and I'd avoid them in DFS.
Nice. All right. Up next, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the Los Angeles Chargers. This game has a 45.5 point total. Vikings are favored by 1.5. Give it to me, Bam.
Give it to me now. So I like running back Dalvin Cook. He got in full practices all week, so I think he's fully healthy after having that chest injury.
Yeah.
And I like him especially in DFS. Madison is out, and so I don't think Cook gets all those carries. I think Abdullah, I can't remember his first name. He's the third string running back to the Vikings. I think he gets Amir Abdullah. Yeah. I think he gets those 5 to 10 relief carries for Cook when he's tired.
Yeah.
And then wide receiver Adam Thielen is finally back after being out multiple weeks with a hammy. And I think it gives a boost to this entire offense. You got wide receiver Stephon Diggs, should see Chargers cornerback Casey Hayward, but Diggs is one of those buy low guys we talk about based on volume. I think you got to play him in this spot because we've seen Hayward give up games to guys like Sutton.
Yeah.
And then tight end Kyle Rudolph goes back to being unusable with Thielen back. So bottom line with this, I think I'd rather roll with the Vikings running game versus the passing game. I'd sit Cousins and I'd play Diggs, and that's about it. Yeah. So what do you think about the Chargers?
So running backs Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler, they're both in play as per usual. However, I don't have a strong preference for either in this spot. I think Eckler is the more talented running back in this backfield, but Melvin Gordon continues to get 20-plus touches a game. So go ahead and fire them both up, but just understand that they don't have a ceiling because you want both of those roles combined.
Yeah.
And the Vikings defense, they're very attackable to outside wide receivers. So I'm firing up Mike Williams this week in all formats.
Oh, yeah.
It's worth pointing out, too, that tight end Hunter Henry has also been playing some outside wide receiver with all those injuries that they've had this year. So I like him as well. Quarterback Old Man Rivers is my real question mark. He stopped throwing his 3 to 5 interceptions per game. He's a streamable option here. I just don't see a big ceiling game in this spot. You have any love for either defense?
I do not. And in fact, I think these are carbon copies of the same defense. So they're both good in real life defenses with the Chargers giving up to the run. They have obvious weakness, and the Vikings giving up to outside wide receivers. But they're not, neither of them are really good for fantasy purposes unless it's a pristine matchup. So I think it's a game that might hit the over a bit. It's only a 45.5 point total. You got some pretty good players on each side. So, no, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Up next, we have the Rams at the Cowboys. This game has a 48.5 point total. Rams are favored by 1. This game has huge playoff implications.
Huge.
As both teams must win to keep any hope alive of making the playoffs. So, with all that being said, kick us off with the Rams.
Well, so this Cowboys defense is a sieve to tight ends. And you got a sieve.
Nice.
And Gerald Everett's out again, so I love Tyler Higbee here. I think he's playable in all formats.
Yeah. Fire up the Higbees, folks.
Blaze them up. Light up them Higbees. And then Robert Woods, your boy, wide receiver, has 27 targets in the last 2 weeks. That's a lot, FYI.
Yes.
Which accounts for 36.5% of the Rams' total targets, which is insane. That's like that's like 2017 DeAndre Hopkins level production. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So we obviously like him. And wide receiver Cooper Kupp is the only other wide receiver worth playing since Brandon Cooks has been phased out, it seems. He's not getting any snaps or targets anymore.
Yeah.
And as always, fade Jared Goff on the road.
Yes.
Because he's a bum, a straight-up dirty hobo bum on the road.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you, though, is not to stack this game in DFS. We want pieces of it but not to stack it.
He could probably stack it a bit, but probably not. But maybe. Could be. Possibly, but probably not.
Who knows?
Yeah.
What do you think about running back Todd Gurley here?
Ooh, I like him this week. Our boy Gurley and the Rams offensive line, they've gotten that outside zone running game working again. That's what Gurley used for that damn near MVP season last year.
Yeah.
And this is important because the Cowboys are awful at defending this specific running game scheme. Ask Dalvin Cook. Add on to that, linebacker Leighton Vander Esch is out again, so should be more room to run. And so I'm not saying, expect a Dalvin Cook style blow up for Gurley here, but 20 fantasy points is a good game for him here, and I think he gets that.
Nice. So speaking of running backs, the other one in this game, Ezekiel Elliott, he's really picked it up lately, and he's behind only Christian McCaffrey, CMC, in high-value touches per game. Now, this hasn't translated to huge fantasy scores yet, but I'm thinking it might against this Rams run defense. It's been very up and down all year, but probably not.
But could be.
But could be.
But who knows?
Speaking of up and down all year, quarterback Dak Prescott, he's coming off 3 straight down games. Adding insult to injury, he gets a Rams defense who hasn't allowed more than 250 yards passing in their last 5 games.
Wow.
Now, among his pass catchers, wide receiver Amari Cooper, he's been banged up. Now he gets a shadow date with cornerback Jalen Ramsey. Wide receiver Michael Gallup, he can get yards or touchdowns, but he can't seem to get both in the same game.
No.
And the Rams are one of the better teams in the league at defending the tight end. So now that I've painted a bleak picture here, what do you want to do?
Oh boy. So I don't know, man. I think the Cowboys have checked out. I think they're done. They're just waiting on Jason Garrett to be fired.
I got you. So what I'm hearing is that you want to play the Rams defense.
Yes, I do. They've been playing great other than that Ravens game. So when you're doing your 3-game sample, checking out stats and whatnot, make sure you eliminate that one because that was just a total destruction.
Yeah. Which
the Ravens have been doing to most teams.
Yeah.
And like we talked about, I think the Cowboys are toast. Stick a fork in them. They're done.
Nice. I still think this Cowboys offense is talented. They got some very talented pieces between Dak, Coop, Zeke.
How are they going to score a touchdown with a fork in them?
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, let's go ahead and moving on. Atlanta Falcons at the San Francisco 49ers. This game has a 48.5 point total. The Niners are favored by 10.5. So go ahead and walk me through the Falcons.
Well, the big news for the Falcons is wide receiver Calvin Ridley is being placed on injured reserve, so he's done. Put a fork in him as well.
Nice.
And per head coach Dan Quinn, wide receivers Christian Blake and Olamide Zacchaeus, I think that's his name. Olamide, Archimedes, whatever.
Nice.
He's going to split Ridley's snaps, those two. So good luck figuring out which one to play.
Nice.
Meanwhile, Russell Gage and Julio Jones continue to be serviceable starters, and that's about it. So Julio's completely fallen off the wagon.
Yeah.
Luckily for this Falcons passing game, the 49ers defense is just decimated with injuries right now. Defensive end D Ford, defensive tackle DJ Jones, cornerback Richard Sherman, cornerback Quan Williams, safety Jaquiski Tartt, all out. So they're missing like 5 starters there.
Nice.
So I really, really, really like tight end Austin Hooper. I think he can get 15 targets in this game. Love him in this spot. And I think Matt Ryan has a nice safe floor too.
Yeah. What you got on the running backs here?
So you got your boys, Devonta Freeman and Brian Hill. They continue to split work, with Freeman getting about 65% of the snaps and Hill getting some of that green zone work. Unfortunately, both roles need to be combined for this to work for fantasy purposes. So I'd fade both if you can.
Yeah, I got you. All right, so on San Francisco side, Colonel Raheem Mostert, your guy.
My boy.
Yep, your boy. He's been named the starting running back of the 49ers. But I keep expecting Shanahanigans to rear its ugly head again. So maybe Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida get all the run here. Who knows? I'm avoiding this backfield to the best of my ability, right?
Yeah, you just don't know week to week.
Yeah. But regardless of who the running back is, their backfield mate, quarterback Jimmy the Gruffalo, has been on fire as of late. He won Player of the Week in Week 14 against the Saints. And as a matter of fact, I'm so enamored by Jimmy G, I'm putting him in my NFL MVP race.
Wow.
Obviously, he won't win. That honor obviously goes to Lamar Jackson. But he's been dang good over the past 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And of his pass catchers, wide receivers Emmanuel Sanders, Deebo Samuels, and tight end George Kittle are all in play. Especially Deebo. He's a yak monster, yard after catch monster. Just like A.J. Brown. He's been quiet as of the past couple weeks, and the Falcons allowed the most yards after catch in the NFL. Now they're missing cornerback Desmond Trufant. So play him, let him win your fantasy league, and then give him back his bike before we bust you in the head with a brick. Debo! What do you think about either defense here?
Well, as the 20th century philosopher Stone Cold Steve Austin used to say, oh, hell no.
Nice.
No, thank you.
I like it. All right, moving on. We have the Buffalo Bills at the Steelers. This game has a 35.5 point total,
Oof.
the lowest point total on the slate, and the Steelers are favored by 1.5. Playoff implications: both teams must win in order to keep pace in the playoff race. So this is a must-win for both teams. What you got on the Steelers side?
So it sounds like James Conner is going to play this week, so he'll probably carry the ball 4 to 5 times and get hurt again. So you got to fade him, and we got to fade Mitch's boy, Biggie Snell, since we don't know what their workload will look like. So Jalen Samuels week, I guess. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then quarterback Ducky Hodges in the passing game looks like this team just doesn't produce fantasy scores. And you add that to the Bills just don't give it up in the passing game. Juju Smith-Schuster's out, and our boy Deontay Johnson had a good game last week, but I'm just going to fade the whole Steelers passing game.
Yeah, I don't blame you there.
So what are you thinking about the Bills?
So on the Bills side, Devin Singletary, he continues to get nice snap and carry counts, but he's just not getting that green zone work. For whatever reason, the Bills go to Frank Gore and his his 87-year-old hips. And so he's just not paying off for fantasy purposes. I'm fading Devin Singletary here.
You need those touchdowns.
Frank Gore. I'm fading the whole thing. Josh Allen, he's been playing really well, quarterback. He's been playing really well lately, but he's very matchup sensitive. And the Steelers are not a defense to pick on. Fade him here.
Yeah.
However, there's one pass catcher I like in this spot, and that's wide receiver Cole Slaw Beasley, who is not just a side dish anymore. You get it?
I do.
He has been averaging 8 targets and 17 fantasy points over the last 3 weeks. Add on to that, he gets to play against the Steelers, who still cannot figure out how to cover a slot wide receiver. You got to give the man his due. Fire up Coleslaw Beasley and just let him run.
Yeah.
What about either defense here?
I think both defenses are playable. Both are very good to elite. And you got these two low-scoring offenses, low total. So, yeah, both defenses are in play.
Yeah, for sure. All right, real quick, we got about a minute left here. Walk us through the Colts and the Saints. 46.5 point total. Saints are favored by 8.5. Hit me with it real quick.
So both teams need to win to keep pace in the playoffs, and both teams are decimated by injuries. So I think this game boils down to, is T.Y. Hilton going to play or not? If he plays, you can play Brisket, Doyle, Pascal. If he doesn't play, I think the Saints get up early on quarterback Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Jared Cook, exploiting that injury. Riddle Colts defense, and they ride Latavius Murray in the second half and rest their starters. So, yeah, it just comes down to if T.Y. Hilton's going to play or not.
Yeah, and I think the Saints defense is an obvious play if Hilton is out.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for the Buy Low Fantasy Sports Show with Mitch and Bam on 1490 News Talk 107.7. We appreciate you being here today. Let's go win this fantasy football championship. I'm Mitch. He's Bam. We're out.
Bye.